Okay, the Vols added 2 more players in the portal last week. Star Thomas, a running back from Duke, signed last Sunday. Late this week, the Vols landed Notre Dame offensive lineman Sam Pendleton. They join offensive lineman Wendell Moy. Is it Moy?
Moy.
Even though it's spelled Mo. And wide receiver Amari Jefferson, who transferred in from Alabama. Tell me about these players, and I will simply start by being Mr. Negative and saying Amari Jefferson didn't play for Alabama last year. Sam Pendleton started the year for Notre Dame and then lost the starting job. How good are Pendleton and Thomas?
I will say Pendleton's situation is a little unique because Notre Dame is really good at developing offensive linemen, put as many NFL offensive linemen out as any program in the country probably. And he beat out a couple of veterans, including a senior, for a starting job in preseason camp. And then they had a guy get injured that sort of made things a little murky, and they had to shuffle guys around. Well, when the injured guy came back, they decided to go with an all-veteran lineup and shake things up a little bit. So not a situation where he just outright got benched because of bad play, just sort of one of those weird deals where he's the 6th guy on a good offensive line and a really good one that had a top 20 rushing offense. So I think Sam Pendleton's a good player. He's got 3 years of eligibility left, too, so a really nice long-term addition potentially. I think that's one of the better pickups of this class. I like all 4 of these additions for Tennessee. Star Thomas, I think, a perfect fit for what they're looking for at running back. Been at New Mexico State, been at Duke, 500-plus rushing yards each of the past 3 years. Really productive at Duke after the starter at running back went down. Took over that backfield for the rest of the year pretty much. So I think he's got some upside there, and you needed some veterans in that, or a veteran at least in that room, with Deshaun Bishop as a redshirt freshman being the elder statesman at running back. So I think all 4 of those guys, including Amari Jefferson, even though, like you said, didn't play as a true freshman, had a hip injury toward the end of the year that had to require surgery. But overall, I think all 4 of those guys have some real potential to help Tennessee in the short term, and in Jefferson's case, maybe more so the long term.
When I hear he's 6th offensive lineman on a really good offensive line, I think Lance Hurd. That's what we heard about him at LSU. Mm-hmm. And maybe he grows into something, but this year that wasn't a dynamic player. Bob, your thoughts on Tennessee's work in the portal? We know they're up against it in terms of slots, so it's not like they can bring in 25 guys. At the same time, are they bringing in anybody that wows people at home?
You know, it's funny.
Not that matters.
Last year when they brought in McCoy at DB, I wasn't wowed by that.
There you go.
And then he ended up being a second-team All-American in some circles and was probably by far, I think, your best defensive back. So I don't think when you look at these guys and you look at the resumes, it doesn't blow you away. You're not sitting there going, hot diggity dang, that gap between us and Ohio State just got closed. But at the same time, you need to sit there and let them play. And I'm just like you on the offensive line with Hurd. Okay, here's what you brought in last year. This was the big get. Man, he's going to be good. And I thought most of the season, he got a little bit better toward the end, but I thought most of the season he did not look like a starting offensive lineman in the SEC. So, you know, it's kind of a non-answer. You just kind of got to wait and see.
Well, and we were talking about recruiting.
None of these
you really
guys
are.
You look at their resumes and go, okay, this fixes this.
Well, I will say, I think Pendleton's more proven. 7 starts that you can look at some highlights. I think his first start or one of his first starts against Texas A&M, held his own against a really strong defensive line. There's a lot more evidence there. Lance Hurd made 1 start at LSU, so I think Pendleton, you at least know he's going to be capable. I think with him and Wendell Moy in particular, the offensive line additions are really good. I think they've got a couple guys that could actually upgrade this offensive line from what it was last year.
And you needed interior linemen. You needed somebody to come in and compete for the guard slots.
Also worth noting, Pendleton could play center. He was the backup center on Notre Dame's depth chart toward the end of the season. So at least worth noting, if you need a guy to move around there because you don't have anyone internally to replace Cooper Mays, he could be that guy.
Sum up all your thoughts, Vince, and give them to me in 30 seconds.
Okay.
That's all we got.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Ryan was saying, the fact that Notre Dame would bring him in, he was a 3-star originally coming out. But the fact that the way they develop and recognize offensive linemen, that they would bring him in and sign him and then play him, I think that's a positive sign. And then you need these positions. Running back, you needed more depth at that position, especially a veteran guy that can run between the tackles some as well. And then there's upside potential with Amari Jefferson. You were number 2 in recruiting him to Alabama because he wanted to play for Nick Saban. That no longer happened, so now he comes to you.
Well, and in the opposite side of the wow factor, we weren't wowed by Jermod McCoy. I wasn't either. And then he turns out to be terrific last year for most of the year. Everybody was going goo goo gaga over Dante Thornton when he arrived.
And Brazel.
And Chris Brazel.
Yeah.
And,
Well, here's another one that didn't wow me.
So being wowed doesn't really mean anything. I mean, it's the only thing we have to talk about at this moment.
2 years ago,
It's all
Peely didn't
this.
wow me when he came. And it turned out when he got hurt, you lost a big chunk of your defense right there. So yeah, I don't, you know, the wow factor, I'm going to wait until September and October, and then I can go, wow.
It's hard to wow Bob, though. I mean, let's be honest.
One interesting thing to note, we got to close out here because you went 30 and then I went over. Well, it's my show. I do that. All right, so it's bad. But I did want to say Tim Banks, we talked about it last week, that finally was finalized. So a 3-year deal for Tim Banks, your defensive coordinator. That deal finally got over the line this week. All right, when we come back, Vols are getting some love in the 2025 early polls. Is it too much love? Is it not enough love? We're closing in on Valentine's Day. Let's talk love. Come on back.